Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is Ron's Amazing.
Hold up here. Stop what you are doing.
And who might you be?
My name is Sir Melville Colvin. I am a barrister from jolly old England. I am here to present you with this cease and desist order.
Oh. And what am I supposed to cease and desist?
It has come to our attention that you plan to play an episode from the Tower of London. All articles contained in the tower, either prisoners or jewels, are the property of Her Grace the Queen.
I think there just might be a misunderstanding here. I'm playing a public domain radio program from the company known as the Towers of London.
Buggers.
Can I continue?
By all means. Sorry to be a bother.
Well, okay then. Take it from the top, guys. Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is Ron's Amazing Stories, where we play tales to take you away from today. On the program today, we debut a brand new radio series from the Tower of London called The Lives of Harry Lime. You might recognize the name from the classic movie series, The Third Man. Also on the show, we have a Sherlock Holmes short story and a mysterious moment in time.
Oh, I jolly well love those.
Don't we all? So, Bob's your uncle, and here is a 5-minute mystery.
Another 5-minute mystery.
This 5-minute mystery is being brought to you by the NCIS.
Huh?
No, not the beloved television show that runs each Tuesday night on CBS. I'm talking about the real NCIS, which of course is the Naval Criminal Investigative Service.
Inspector Dunn, come in.
Came as soon as I got your phone call. What's up, Lieutenant?
Well, usually Navy intelligence doesn't call in anyone else on a case. But now we're dealing with murder. Does the name A-92 mean anything to you?
A-92? Isn't that the Navy fighter that crashed in the test flight?
That's right, Inspector. We of the Navy tackled the job of seeing what went wrong with the plane. That was no accident. It was sabotage.
Sabotage?
Yes. That means, beside losing a vital aircraft, we also lost a more vital test pilot. Sabotage caused his death, or, to be blunt, murder.
That's where I come in.
Yes, Inspector.
Tell me, Lieutenant, how did the A-92 happen to crash?
Well, the plane was pretty well damaged by the time we reached it. But we did find marked indications that the landing gear had been tampered with.
Wasn't the plane closely guarded before the test?
Yes, it was. And with the exception of the ground crew, only 3 men came in contact with the plane.
Oh, who were they?
Well, of course, it was Malloy, the pilot who was killed.
Yeah?
And then there was McGraw, who was another pilot, and Jaeger, who was the chief mechanic.
When could I question these two?
Right away, if you want to. We've got them waiting in the next room. I'll call them in here. McGraw, Jaeger, you come in, please.
Go, Lieutenant.
Yeah. Boys, this is Inspector Dunn.
How you doing, gentlemen? Sit down, won't you?
McGraw here was to have been the pilot from the test. But he fractured his wrist a few days ago, so Malloy had to take over.
You certainly were lucky, McGraw. You could have been in that crash instead of the other fellow.
Yeah, you said it.
Tell me, Jaeger, what were your duties around the A-92 as chief mechanic?
Well, after the ground crew got finished with the plane, I'd make the final check.
Did you do that the day the A-92 crashed?
Yes, Inspector, and I didn't find anything wrong with it. Can't understand it. That fighter could have been the most powerful thing on wings if it hadn't cracked up. There was nothing the A-92 couldn't do.
She'd have made airplane history. Malloy, he didn't trust any of these new grease monkeys. He always wanted the plane to be given a last okay by Jaeger.
Say, Inspector, would you like the names of the ground crew? There might be a phony among them.
No, Jaeger. I think I've got our saboteur.
What do you mean?
I mean, he's in this very room.
Well, don't just sit there, Inspector. Tell us who he is.
Yes.
Certainly, gentlemen. Our combination murderer and saboteur is none other than Chief Mechanic Jaeger.
What clue led the inspector to believe that Jaeger is the guilty one? We'll give you the solution in a moment. But first...
pretty thin case here. Our naval inspector pointed the finger at the most logical person, but as far as I can tell, he doesn't have any evidence.
Evidence is nice.
I agree, but hey, as we all know, most of these 5-minute mysteries make no sense. That's why we love them. This 5-minute mystery is being brought to you by the NCIS.
And now, back to our story.
What, me, a saboteur? Well, my job is to repair planes, not to destroy them.
And your job is also to give the final okay on the A-92.
Yeah, but...
If anything had been done to the plane prior to your inspection, you would have noticed it. But no, there was nothing wrong with the A-92 till you gave it a final check and sabotaged it.
But, Inspector, why would he do a thing like that?
Possibly for money, or maybe a possible grudge. I don't know now, Lieutenant, but I think the boys at headquarters will get that out of him quick enough. Come on, Jaeger, we're going to take a little ride.
Well, he really cleared that one up for me. He basically said he didn't know, but after we lean on the guy, I'm sure we'll get the answers. I bet he will too. Mark Harmon would never do it that way. Oh well, this 5-minute mystery was brought to you by the NCIS. I've got to say that a couple brand new features have been added to the home website at ronsamazingstories.com. The first is a link to the RAS archive site. This is a page on the Internet Archive that contains all the shows from 2011 through the end of 2012. There may even be a few early 2013s there. You can stream, download, and view all of the early podcasts from Ron's Amazing Stories. This ends a long-term project to complete the archive websites. Now, there are a lot of good things there, and all you have to do is click on Archives on the side panel. Also, there is a new tab available called Blog. Right now, this simply guides you to the current blog site. In the future, I plan to close the WordPress site and incorporate the blog and the podcast all in one place. Easier for me to maintain and easier for you to find all the stuff. However, it will change how you subscribe to the blog, and I'll give out more information on that before the change. Bottom line, I'm waiting for my WordPress subscription to run out. So head on over to ronsamazingstories.com and check out these brand new changes. Our OTR story today is a suggestion from David Larsen. Now, you might remember David from the latest edition of the Horror Express titled David Larsen's Marionette. If you have not heard this podcast, I highly recommend it. You can find it at ronsamazingstories.com. David wrote, "Hey Ron, I remember another radio serial based on the movie The Third Man. It is called The Lives of Harry Lime. It is a crime show from the point of view of the criminal and is played by Orson Welles as Harry. It is an episodic serial that doesn't have an overarching storyline. It's one of the first OTR shows that I've ever listened to, and it's one of my favorites. If you ever want to watch the original movie, it can be found on Amazon Prime. As a side note, the movie and the character are much darker than the radio version." David. Well, David, I've not heard of this series before and checked it out. It turns out that Orson Welles does reprise his role of Harry Lime from the celebrated 1949 film. However, in the film, Lime dies, and thus the third man with him. So, how to continue the series? Well, what they did was simple. The radio series is a prequel to the film and depicts the many misadventures of the con artist. I picked the very first program on the list to play, and I have to say, I love the writing in this one. Very sharp. It is titled Too Many Crooks, and first aired on August 3rd, 1951.
Presenting Orson Welles as the Third Man. The Lives of Harry Lime. The fabulous stories of the immortal character, originally created in the motion picture The Third Man, with zither music by Anton Karas.
That was the shot that killed Harry Lime. He died in a sewer beneath Vienna. As those of you know who saw the movie The Third Man. Yes, that was the end of Harry Lime. But it was not the beginning. Harry Lime had many lives. And I can recount all of them. How do I know? Very simple. Because my name is Harry Lime. Don't get me wrong, I love Budapest. From Budapest come goulashes and shardashes. Shardashes being something you dance and goulash being something you eat if you go for all that paprika. Me, I love it. So, when I got that telegram, I took the first train to Hungary. Maybe I'd better tell you about the telegram first. Dear Mr. Lime, it said, my bank is going to be robbed and I need your help. It was signed Fekete, evidently a man's name, nobody I knew. I knew all about bank robberies, however, and I was dying to help. Besides, as I say, I love paprika. So I started packing right away.
And now Orson Welles as Harry Lime, the Third Man, in today's story, Too Many Crooks.
Before calling at the bank, I stopped at a cute little flower shop I happened to notice across the way. Good morning. Would you give me something for my buttonhole? Why, Lily. Lily, what are you doing here?
We have some very pretty pink gardenias.
Oh, come on, Lily, don't tell me you don't remember me. And how are all the Corellis?
The who?
Don't give me that, Lily.
My name is Lulu.
Well, it used to be Lily, and you used to be a blonde. And the Corellis, as you know perfectly well, because you used to work for them, are the best bank robbers in Central Europe. Well, what about it, honey?
Here are your gardenias, Harry. Now get out of here.
Okay, honey, okay. No need to get in a hassle.
I'm telling you, Harry, get out.
I never was one to argue, so I took my gardenia across the street and the bank.
Mr. Fekete will see Mr. Harry Lime.
You can go in now, Mr. Lime.
Oh, thank you.
Mr. Fekete will see you.
Yes, that's what I gathered.
This way, please. And,
thank you.
Oh, Mr. Lime,
Yes.
will you please extinguish your cigarette? Mr. Fekete does not approve of smoking.
Thanks, I'll bear that in mind.
Mr. Lime.
Come in and shut the door. There's a date.
Do you mind if I sit down, Mr. Fekete, or is there a rule against that?
Sit down. You're a very impertinent young man, but I don't mind that. I am an impertinent older man. We ought to get along together very nicely.
What's your proposition, Mr. Fekete?
Yeah. What do you mean?
Just what I said. What's your proposition?
Listen to me, Lime. I don't make propositions. I consider them.
Have it your own way, Fekete. I'm a big boy now, and I'm not so easily impressed.
What do you mean, impressed?
All this big desk, double secretary, Mr. Fekete will see you now. Mr. Fekete doesn't approve of smoking, busy executive hoopla. May go down very well with the bumpkins who give you their money to invest. It doesn't mean a thing to me. You sent for me, didn't you? I crossed 3 national borders to get here and lost a lot of time, so don't ask me what's my proposition. What's yours, Mr. Fekete?
Very good indeed. You're just the man I hoped you were. Have a cigar.
Wouldn't that be breaking the rules?
I make the rules, Mr. Lime, and I don't like cheap tobacco smoke. Now, do I enjoy being forced to distribute these very costly custom-made Havanas to every, what is it you call them, bumpkin, who comes into my office? I think you'll enjoy these.
Thanks.
Light?
Thanks.
Good. Now that we're a little more at ease, suppose you tell me something about yourself.
Why?
What do you mean, why?
I wish you'd stop asking me what I mean by everything I say, Feckety. I said why, and I meant why. You put private detectives on my trail. You found me. You made me a very substantial down payment on services to be rendered. And now, when I get here, you want me to tell you about myself. That's just plain silly, old man. It's obvious that if you went to all that trouble and expense to get me here, you knew about me already. I'm the one to ask the questions, not you.
Better and better. Mr. Lime, if you were just a little less notorious as a crook, I'd offer you a vice presidency in my bank.
I forgive the insult, Mr. Feckety.
What do you mean, insult?
There you go asking me what I mean again. I meant insult.
Now, don't you get pompous on me, Lime. You are a crook, a well-famous one. You don't want to deny that?
What I don't want is very simple, Mr. Feckety. I don't want to be a vice president of your bank.
Oh? Oh, I follow you now. Don't worry, Lime.
Right.
I promised you $20,000.
That's right.
Or its equivalent in Hungarian pesos.
Oh, wait a minute.
And you'll get it without having to serve as an officer of this
You
bank.
promised me $20,000, old man. There weren't any gimmicks in the agreement about the joke money you folks pass off on each other locally. I know. I carry my own microscope for reading the fine type.
Very well, very well. $20,000 it is. Don't you want to know what I expect you to do for it?
Mr. Feckety, you keep making me repeat myself. I told you before that I'm a big boy now. If you're giving me $20,000, I can relax, not worry about asking you silly questions. You're going to get around eventually to telling me what you expect me to do for it.
Did you ever hear of a bank giving a reward?
Yes, but only after a bank robbery.
Exactly. Exactly. Only after a bank has been robbed. I'm reversing the procedure, Line. I'm giving the reward first.
Oh, so that's the little caper, is it? You want me to rob your bank for you?
Oh, not at all, not at all. A reward is usually given for apprehending the thieves who have robbed the bank. What I want you to do, Harry, I may call you Harry? Maybe?
Certainly, old man. Call me Harry if it gives you any fun.
Well, Harry, what I want you to do is to apprehend the robbers before the robbery is committed. Very clever, don't you think so? Have another cigar.
In my business, I may get in the way of an awful lot of screwy deals, but I can tell you that never in a long career have I been offered in complete seriousness a loopier proposition than Mr. Feckety. It seems the key to the whole affair was Mr. Feckety's junior officer in the bank, a certain Mr. Fodor.
Ladislaus Fodor is the full name, Harry. He's one of our vice presidents.
I see.
I tell you this right now, the man is an unprincipled criminal.
Oh?
And come here, and I'll show him to you. Come this way. You can see him through the glass panel.
Yes.
There he is.
Oh, that one.
Second desk to the right. With all those silly hairs pasted over his bald head. That's the man.
He doesn't look very dangerous to me.
Fodor? Dangerous? He has the brain of a backward bird and the charm of a worm. Now that I look back on it, I can't imagine how I ever persuaded myself to be jealous of him.
Jealous? I don't follow you, old man.
If I have a fault, Harry, it is this. I do tend to be jealous. Lulu often chides me about it, and I have promised to curb the instinct, but there, it is a part of my character.
Lulu? You mean the girl in the flower shop across the way, that Lulu?
She is the only Lulu I know, Mr. Lyon. How does it happen that you are acquainted with her?
You see this carnation?
I see it, yes.
Lulu sold it to me, overcharged me scandalously, as a matter of fact.
Well, Lulu is a working girl. She must live. How does it happen you know her?
What makes you think I do?
You know her name?
Oh, one of the other customers called her that while I was still in the shop. As it happens, it was this little fellow you just pointed out to me over there, the vice president, Fodor.
Third vice president.
I hate to keep harping on these commercial matters, Feckety, old man, but just how does my $20,000 reward come into the picture?
Let us retire to my inner office, Harry, and I will tell you.
Okay,
Come.
old man.
Sit down, please, Harry. Have another cigar.
My pockets are bulging with cigars now, old man. Let's concentrate on the $20,000.
Certainly, certainly. Oh, Miss Carver. Miss Carver.
Yes, Mr. Feckety?
No matter who calls, don't disturb me. Not on any account. I'm having an important conference.
Yes, Mr. Feckety.
Oh, jealousy, Harry. Jealousy is a terrible
Yes,
thing.
yes, certainly is. Now, about this reward.
Jealousy is the green-eyed monster who doth mock the meat it feeds on. That's how the poet Shakespeare expresses
the
it.
poet
Harry.
Shakespeare said a mouthful, and now...
But still, if it had not been for jealousy, I would never have followed this Fodor into Lulu's shop. And if I hadn't done that, I would never have discovered the digging.
Digging? What digging?
What would you say, Harry, if I were to tell you that running under the street from Lulu's flower shop to this bank, there is a tunnel?
A tunnel?
What would you say if I told you that?
Well, I'd say, well, what do you know? That's what I'd say.
That's what I said when I found out about it. And that's why I say now that I mustn't ever forget to be grateful to jealousy, particularly since I've discovered that there's nothing between Lolo and Fodor. Or nothing serious.
And do you know what I'd say to that?
No?
A couple of rude words.
Yeah, but why?
Why? You find them scrabbling away together like a couple of chubby moles, digging away in the general direction of your bank vault, and you say there's nothing serious between them?
There isn't, I'm sure of that. I have Lulu's file. And besides, what could she possibly see in a fat little nonentity like Fodor? No, the only one who thinks it's serious is Fodor. And that's the whole point. Fodor is a dupe, a mere cat's paw in the conspiracy.
Oh, yes? And who's the mastermind?
I am.
Uh-huh. And what does Fodor think about that?
He languishes in ignorance. He knows nothing. And to think that he aspires, he dares to aspire to my position in the bank.
And how does Lulu fit in?
I must tell you that Lulu has given me some reason to hope that she will someday make me the happiest man in the world.
And how would she do that? By giving up Fodor or sending you a big bouquet of roses? Let's get down to cases, old man. Wedding bells can ring out from Buda to Pest and back again, but I won't be there to throw any rice unless I get paid. What is it exactly you want from me? Lessons on how to help Fodor and Lulu rob your bank?
Fodor's going to do the robbing, and besides, it isn't my bank. I'm only a salaried officer.
And then Fodor gives you the money to give to Lulu, is that it?
Certainly not. That would be silly.
That's just what I was thinking.
No, every day Fodor is supposed to take the paper money from the various cages and place it in the vault.
Yeah?
This is his responsibility.
Yeah.
Tonight, however, he will not do this. He will leave the money outside the vault, hidden in a large filing cabinet.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the entire plan has been carefully worked out, I can assure you.
All I can say is this Fodor of yours is a very cooperative type of cat's paw.
Don't call him this Fodor of yours. He isn't. He's no Fodor of mine.
Have it your own way, old man. What comes next? You, I suppose, huh? You come a half hour later with a dark lantern and a gunny sack. You wrap up the money, join Lulu, who's been waiting for you across the street in the flower shop, and the two of you, hand in hand, move off down the road into the sunrise and also into the very choicest Hungarian hooskow.
What is a hooskow?
A jail or prison, a place of forcible incarceration, a lockup for bad little bank robbers.
Not at all, not at all. It is Fodor who goes to prison.
Oh, yes? And how do you work that?
That is one of the things I want you to arrange.
Oh, I see. I'm going to have to earn that $20,000. I think we'll start by having it deposited in my name and in somebody else's bank, old man.
Why now? And why another bank?
Well, every bank in Budapest isn't going to be robbed tonight, so I think I'd prefer one of the others. And I'll take it now because I know you wouldn't want me to go to the police with what is, after all, a fairly sordid little
Go
story.
to the police, but that's blackmail.
Oh, watch your language, old man. Blackmail's a nasty word. You know, all I want is protection for my poor little $20,000. I'll give you service for it, too, but I want to be absolutely positive that you're ready to meet your payroll.
Very well. You'll have your money, but you will help me.
I'm going to need a few more solid facts, old man.
Well, it all began with this insane jealousy of mine for Fodor.
Oh, yeah?
I took to following him. He used to go into Lulu's flower shop at night long after it was closed. And one time he left the shutter unfastened and I went in. There were no lights in the shop itself, but I could hear voices from the basement below. I opened the trapdoor very carefully so as not to be heard. And what do you think I saw?
You saw Lulu, Fodor, and 3 men all hard at work digging a tunnel.
Yeah. How did you know?
I didn't, I guess. After all, you told me there was a tunnel.
But the 3 men, how did you know about them?
Still guessing. It's pretty obvious that Mr. Fodor and Lulu couldn't dig much of a hole without getting some help. Tell me this. It was Lulu who persuaded you to call me in on this deal, wasn't it?
How did you know that?
Still just guessing, old man, just guessing. Now, let me guess on for a minute and stop me when I'm wrong. When you saw what Lulu and Fodor were doing, you went home and brooded for a while, and then a few days afterwards, you confronted her.
It was the next day.
Oh, okay, it was the next day. And Lulu admitted she was planning to rob the bank, but said she was just using Fodor, and you were the only one she really cared about. And if you joined the party, it's you she'd run off with, leaving Mr. Fodor holding the bag. An empty bag. How am I doing?
Oh, you're a clever man.
Sure I am. That's why Lulu had you send for me.
You see, the idea is that Fodor will hide the money outside the vault and leave. Then, according to the arrangement, as he understands it, Lulu will come through the tunnel at night with her helpers and take the money back under the street through the tunnel.
Who did she tell Fodor these helpers were?
She said one of them is her brother and the other 2 are cousins.
And what did she tell you?
That's what she told me. Why?
Nothing, old man. Nothing at all. Just give me one more guess,
Oh, go ahead.
After Fodor leaves the money, what you do is crawl back through the tunnel with a sack of currency clenched in your teeth. But no, that wouldn't make any sense, would it? You'd run into a couple of brothers crawling in the opposite direction.
I'm not to have anything to do with the tunnel.
Oh.
You see, Fodor leaves the money out just before closing time. That way, he's implicated, and we have a scapegoat. So there's nothing to stop me from letting myself in with my key at night and walking away with the money. Who could suspect me? It's a perfect crime, Harry. Wouldn't you say so?
Yes, it's quite a crime if you look at it in one way. But tell me about the brothers. What are they supposed to think about all this?
Oh, they don't know about it. Lulu hasn't told them.
But the news will reach them eventually, and what then?
They must be implicated somehow, along with Fodor. But I must be protected, and Lulu. That's what you're here for, Harry. Have another cigar.
Orson Welles returns in just a moment as the third man. And now, Orson Welles, as the third man, continues with today's story, Too Many Crooks.
Naturally, the first thing I did after making my farewells to Mr. Feckerty was to go across the street and pay a call on Lulu.
Harry,
Yeah?
listen to me carefully.
I'm listening, honey.
There's a little cafe on the hill above the old city. You know the place?
Mm.
There's a gold rooster on the roof.
Well, what about it?
Go there and wait for me. You never can tell when Fodor or Feckerty will be bursting in here. They keep jumping across the street to check up on each other and buying geraniums. Go to the cafe and I'll be with you as soon as I can close up
What
here.
about the boys below?
Oh, what do you mean?
The construction crew, the Corellis.
Oh, Feckerty told you about the Corellis?
I would have found out anyway, Lily.
Lulu.
Okay, what happens to them if you shut up the store? Isn't there a way out?
No, but they won't be finished work before I'm back. And besides, what they don't know won't hurt them.
Lily, or rather Lulu, it looks to me as though just about everybody around here is due to be hurt by what they don't know. I found the Gold Rooster and sat down on the terrace of the restaurant to wait for Mr. Feckerty's fiancée. Over a glass of Tokay, I tried to add up the situation as of then. As far as I could see, the whole setup was like a Picasso painting. No matter how you looked at it, it was cockeyed and upside down.
Hello, Harry. Don't order anything for
Hi.
me. I haven't time.
Don't worry, Lily. I'm not here to celebrate. We can have our party after I know who's going to pay the check.
I wish you call me Lulu.
Okay, Lulu. Now, here's all the sense I can make out of this little caper. You came here with the Corelli gang,
No,
right?
they came first. Then they sent for me to work in the flower shop for a front. The tunnel was their idea.
Then you sent for me. That was your
You're
idea.
right.
Now, Fodor thinks he's going to divvy up with the Corellis and marry you on the proceeds.
Something like
And
that.
Feckerty thinks something like the same something. The president thinks he's going to put it over the vice president. What about the construction crew?
You mean Walter and
Yes,
the others?
the Corellis, the original burglars. What are they going to get out of this? According to Feckerty, it's going to be the old double cross. But if I know you, Feckerty's in for the same gentle treatment.
Harry, why should anybody get anything out of this except...
Okay, Lily, okay. Book a couple of spaces for us on the first milk train out of Budapest, but be sure to get reservations on the bulletproof car.
I wish you'd call me Lulu.
Time marches on. A lot of trusting Hungarian depositors line up at the bank, leave their hard-earned pengos at the impressive-looking gilt cages for what they fondly believe is safekeeping, and hurry home to have their evening plate of goulash. Closing time comes and goes. Feckerty doesn't leave. He just pretends to, and stays skulking in his office. Meanwhile, Fodor takes the big packages of pengos, which, as you know, is Hungarian for money, dutifully to the door of the vault. He slams the vault loudly, this being for the benefit of the janitor, who is deaf anyway and doesn't hear, and quickly stows the loot in the empty filing cabinet which he has thoughtfully left nearby for just this purpose. He then goes home and passes a very restless night. The moon rises over the city and winks at its own reflection in the Danube. A lot of good Hungarians are in their beds. The others are all in a nightclub called the Arizona, dancing the Shardash. They do not come into this story, so we'll leave them dancing. Down onto the street, the Corellis, those adept bank robbers, continue to dig. They are putting the finishing touches on their tunnel, and we will not listen in on them because their conversation is very vulgar indeed. In his luxurious office, Mr. Feckerty sits biting his nails and dreaming of a long West Indian cruise with Lulu in an adjoining deck chair. As the gang in the tunnel understand it, when the clock strikes 12, they are to open the secret trap door which they have previously prepared inside the bank, a section of tiling near the vault, go to the filing cabinet and take out the money which Fodor has left there, thus eliminating the noise and inconvenience of breaking into the vault, and, first closing the loose tile after themselves, scuttle back with the loot under the street into the flower shop, out into the night, and as far away from Hungary as possible. As I say, that's the way the gang in the tunnel understand it. This is also the arrangement as Mr. Fodor understands it, with a trifling difference. that he expects Lulu to stop by for him with his share of the profits. Like Mr. Feckerty, he is biting his nails and dreaming of tropical cruises. And what of Lulu? What of Lulu, indeed? It is Lulu's little plan to foozle everybody, Corelli, Fodor, and Feckerty. She's led them all on to just this point. It is the point of departure. Lulu's departure. Lulu and all those neatly wrapped packages of pingos. The trouble is, it's all just a little bit too much for one little girl to handle alone, so Harry Lime's been sent for. Harry is supposed to assist at the general foozling of one and all, and then, in due time, of course, he's to be foozled as well. Lulu will send Harry off to mail a postcard, and when he gets back, Lulu will have continued her travels alone, with nothing to keep her company but the loot. That, as I say, is the way Lulu understands it. The clock, high in the steeple of San Stefano, strikes 12. This is the signal. Mr. Corelli, that celebrated expert, with his 2 able assistants, starts toward the bank. The tunnel was not built for comfort, and the going on hands and feet is a trifle rough. There's a bit of genteel cursing, but hearts are high. At the sound of the clock, Mr. Feckerty removes the bound bundles of money from their place of safety and checks once again the bolts and fastenings which keep the loose tile in its place. In the darkness, Mr. Feckerty smiles. He is satisfied that, contrary to the Corelli's expectations, the bank end of the tunnel is firmly and irrevocably closed. Still smiling, he starts toting the money toward the side door for which he, Mr. Feckerty, is the perfectly legal possessor of a key. On the outside, Lulu, with a high-speed car, is supposed to be waiting for him. Unfortunately, however, a moment earlier, Harry Lime, on the flower shop end of the tunnel, has persuaded Lulu to go down for a moment and tell the boys not to try lifting that trick tile for at least a half hour. Lulu hates herself now for not having analyzed the merits of this suggestion. She has plenty of time now to think this over because foxy old Harry in the flower shop has bolted down the trap door. The clock has stopped striking, of course, and Mr. Feckerty pops out of his bank looking for all the world like a jolly Christmas shopper with his arms loaded with bundles. There is a high-speed car waiting for Mr. Feckerty, all right, but it is full of strange gentlemen, and they are all dressed in uniforms.
Put up your hands, Feckerty. Put up your hands. You're under arrest.
But there's some mistake.
Oh, not at all, old man. No mistake at all. You see, gentlemen, just as you were told, there he is, and there's the money.
Come along now, Feckerty. We are taking you in.
You, Harry, a police informer.
Not a bit of it, old man. I wouldn't dream of telling on you. No, the cops got the tip-off from an anonymous letter, and you know how you spell anonymous? L-U-L-U.
Lulu. She did it.
Lulu. That wouldn't be Lulu Hartz, would it? Alias Lily the Twister.
Yes, officer, I believe so. There's a reward offered for her capture, isn't there?
I should say there is.
What about the Corelli gang?
They've got the biggest price on their heads in Central Europe.
Oh, that's lovely. It's all beginning to add up. When you throw in the generous reward Mr. Feckerty posted in the name of his bank this afternoon.
But you're not going to collect that, are you?
Why not, old man? After all, you put up the money for me to collect before the bank was robbed, didn't you? You also wanted me to thwart the Corellis, and if you yourself are foolish enough to go breaking the law, you'll just have to tell it to the judge.
I'll tell him plenty. I'll tell him about you.
Go ahead. I haven't broken any laws, remember, and you'll only help me collect my various rewards.
Matter of fact, Lime, just what is your connection with this affair? What have you done?
Officer, all I did was turn a bolt on a trap door. Nothing at all, really, just a twist to the wrist. And now if you've got some spare handcuffs ready, I think we better open it up again. The folks down below may be getting a little fretful, and I think they'll appreciate a change of scene. If you'll come with me, officer, I'll show you the place.
Really, Mr. Lime, I can't tell you how
grateful. Please, old man, don't mention it. Pleasure, I assure you. Won't you have a cigar?
Harry Lime returns in just a moment. And now, Harry Lime.
You know, friends, I had thought of substituting those fat packages of pengos for the same weight of old newspapers. But the rate of exchange wasn't so good on the pengo just then, so I resisted the temptation. After all, as Mother always said, too many crooks spoil the goulash.
I gotta say, I thoroughly enjoyed that one. My thanks to David for bringing it to us. The Adventures of Harry Lime is one of the most successful series created by the prolific British radio producer Harry Alan Towers and his company, the Towers of London. Towers learned that the rights to the character of Harry Lime were still available even after the success of the movie. He quickly bought them and hired Orson Welles to reprise the role. To make the series work, several episodes would begin with the Third Man theme, abruptly cut off by an echoing gunshot. Then Welles would speak.
That was the shot that killed Harry Lime.
Although often cited as a BBC production, the series was one of a number produced and distributed independently by the Towers of London and then syndicated internationally. How about that?
Get wild, Ruth Queen, wow, Charlie. It keeps your hair in trim. You see it's non-alcoholic, Charlie. It's made with pseudolanolin. You better get wild, Ruth Cream Oil, Charlie. Start using it today. You'll find that you will have a tough time, Charlie. Keeping all those gals away. Hurry up, Baldy. Get up on a right away. Your druggist has it. A little goes a long, long way. You hear it screaming. Keeps you looking neat all day.
The year is 1969, and this is A Moment in Time. It's not uncommon for writers to publish works under an alias, but few of them went to greater lengths to conceal their identity than a mysterious author named B. Travan. Over the course of 2 decades, he published 12 novels and several short stories, his most famous being The Treasure of the Sierra Madre in 1927. This is the adventure story that would be adapted into an Academy Award-winning film starring Humphrey Bogart. Yet in spite of writing such an iconic piece of work, Travan managed to take the secret of his true identity to the grave. When he died in 1969, he left behind a will claiming that his real name was Travan Tuazvan Kroos, and that he was born in Chicago in 1890. However, there is no record of anyone by that name having lived in the Windy City. It is believed that B. Travan lived the early part of his life living in Europe because many of his works were written in German and then translated into English. He wrote most of his novels while living in Mexico and worked hard to maintain his privacy. He limited his interactions with other people, and very few photographs of him exist. In fact, I could only find one. There are many theories about who Travan might be, but the best candidate is Ret Marut, a German actor who disappeared after fleeing Europe in 1924. Shortly after, B. Travan started publishing novels in Mexico. Marut was also known for being very protective about his identity, and it's speculated that he previously lived under a different name before becoming an actor. Were Ret Marut and Travan Tuazvan Kroos the same person? Whatever the real truth, the identity of B. Travan continues to remain a mystery.
From San Francisco comes
Right, a rolling, the San Francisco treat. Right, Aroni, the flavor can't be beat. One pan, no boiling, cooking ease.
A flavor that is sure to please.
Rice Aroni, the San Francisco treat.
Rice-A-Roni, the delicious break from potatoes. Now in 6 fabulous flavors.
One pan, no boiling, cooking ease.
A flavor that is sure to please.
Rice Aroni, the San Francisco treat.
This has been another Moment in Time. If you have a moment in time to share, please do. You can send it to ronsamazingstories.com.
As read by Amazing Stories, read by amazing people.
This time on As Read By, we have a short story sent in to Ron's Amazing Stories by long-term friend of the show, Brian Johnson. Brian has been listening to the podcast since 2012 and has the distinction of being the first person to rate the show. He gave it 5 stars, by the way, and I thank you, Brian, for that. Brian's story comes from the pen of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and is a pretty rare one. In fact, the only publishing record for it is by Edinburgh University. More on this later. It is called The Field Bazaar, and I have to say, like all Sherlock Holmes stories, it all seems so simple. This story is read for us by Mike Harris.
The Field Bazaar, a story of Sherlock Holmes by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, written in 1896. "Oh, I should certainly do it," said Sherlock Holmes. When I started it, the interruption from my companion had been eating his breakfast with his attention entirely centered upon the paper which was propped up by the coffee pot. Well, now I looked across at him to find his eyes fastened upon me with a half-amused, half-questioning expression which he usually assumed when he felt he had made an intellectual point. "Do what?" I asked. He smiled as he took his slipper from the mantelpiece and drew from it enough shag tobacco to fill the old clay pipe with which he invariably rounded off his breakfast. "A most characteristic question of yours, Watson," said he. "You will not, I am sure, be offended if I say that any reputation for sharpness which I may possess has been entirely gained by the admirable foil which you have made for me. Have I not heard of debutantes who have insisted upon plainness in their chaperons? Well, there is a certain analogy." Our long companionship in the Baker Street rooms had left us on those easy terms of intimacy when much may be said without offence, and yet I acknowledge that I was nettled by his remark. "I may be very obtuse," said I, "but I confess that I am unable to see how you have managed to know that I was asked to help in the Edinburgh University bazaar. But precisely. The letter was only just come to hand, and I have not spoken to you since." "In spite of that," said Holmes, leaning back in his chair and putting his fingertips together, "I would even venture to suggest that the object of the bazaar is to enlarge the university cricket field." I looked at him in such bewilderment that he vibrated with silent laughter. "The fact is, my dear Watson, that you are an excellent subject," said he. "You are never blasé. You respond instantly to any external stimulus. Your mental processes may be slow, but they are never obscure, and I found during breakfast that you were easier reading than the leader in the Times in front of me." "Well, I should be glad to know how you arrived at your conclusions," said I. "I fear that my good nature in giving explanations has seriously compromised my reputation," said Holmes. "But in this case the train of reasoning is based upon such obvious facts that no credit can be claimed for it. You entered the room with a thoughtful expression, the expression of a man who is debating some point in his mind. In your hand you held a solitary letter. Now, last night you retired in the best of spirits, so it was clear that it was this letter in your hand which had caused the change in you." "Yes, this is obvious." "Well, it's all obvious when it's explained to you. I naturally asked myself what the letter could contain which might have this effect upon you. And as you walked, you held the flap side of the envelope toward me, and I saw upon it the same shield-shaped device which I had observed upon your old college cricket cap. It was clear, then, that the request came from Edinburgh University, or from some club connected with the university. When you reached the table, you laid down the letter beside your plate with the address uppermost, and you walked over to look at the framed photograph upon the left of the mantelpiece. It amazed me to see the accuracy with which he had observed my movements. "And what next?" I asked. I began by glancing at the address, and I could tell, even at the distance of 6 feet, that it was an unofficial communication. Thus I gathered from the use of the word doctor upon the address, to which, as a bachelor of medicine, you have no legal claim. I knew that university officials are pedantic in their correct use of titles, and I was thus enabled to say with certainty that your letter was unofficial. When on your return to the table you turned over your letter and allowed me to perceive that the enclosure was a printed one, the idea of a bazaar first occurred to me. I had already weighed the possibility of its being a political communication, but this seemed improbable in the present stagnant condition of politics. So when you returned to the table, your face still retained its expression, and it was evident that your examination of the photograph had not changed the current of your thoughts. In that case, it must itself bear upon the subject in question. I turned my attention to the photograph, therefore, and saw at once that it consisted of yourself as a member of the Edinburgh University 11, with the pavilion and cricket field in the background. My small experience of cricket clubs has taught me that, next to churches and cavalry ensigns, they are the most debt-laden things upon earth. When upon your return to the table I saw you take out your pencil and draw lines upon the envelope, I was convinced that you were endeavouring to realize some projected improvement which was to be brought about by a bazaar. Your face still showed some indecision, so that I was able to break in upon you with my advice that you should assist in so good an object. I could not help smiling at the extreme simplicity of his explanation. "Of course, it was as easy as possible," said I. My remark appeared to nettle him. "I may add," said he, "that the particular help which you have been asked to give was that you should write in their album, and that you have already made up your mind that the present incident will be the subject of your article." But how?" I cried. "It's as easy as possible," said he, "and I leave its solution to your own ingenuity. In the meantime," he added, raising his paper, "you will excuse me if I return to this very interesting article upon the trees of Cremona, and the exact reasons for the preeminence in the manufacture of violins. It's one of those small outlying problems to which I am sometimes tempted to direct my attention." End of The Field Bazaar by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Recording by Mike Harris.
The Field Bazaar by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was written for an Edinburgh University fundraising event in 1896. Doyle had been requested by his university to contribute a short piece of literature for a charity magazine. Now, did you notice that in the story, Watson received a similar request? That was an interesting twist, I thought. It also shows us the famous skills of Sherlock Holmes. How he can produce miraculous results from nothing is amazing. While Watson reads the letter at breakfast, Holmes correctly deduces the sender of the letter and Watson's own thoughts regarding it. One last point. Most of the Holmes stories begin at a traditional breakfast scene. This very short tale was no exception. How about that?
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Delicious things to eat. The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy, the chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
A podcast beginneth, and it endeth. I just hope that you enjoyed it. I have spoken to Jason and have confirmed the recording date for the next Horror Express. That means it should publish on the 25th of January. On next week's show, we're going to do some scary stuff, so I will see you then. If you want to follow the podcast or the blog, it's easy to do. Just head to ronsamazingstories.com. There you'll find every link you could possibly need. We are on Twitter, Facebook, iTunes, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and many other services. Pick one and do leave us some feedback about the show. It really does help us to grow. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come again to find out what are Ron's Amazing Stories.
All of the vintage audio used in the podcast is believed to be in the public domain. Ron's Amazing Stories does not own the rights to any of the old-time radio used here. If you hold the rights to any of the shows played, please contact us immediately at ronsamazingstories.com.